Hello, my name is Dr. Brandon Stephen Park, and today we're going to be talking about positive reinforcement, positive recognition. This is something that's really important to me as we're learning about what helps people to feel better about themselves, to learn, and to want to grow. Positive reinforcement has become key. And that's come out of a few different areas of learning and growth. Some of the areas it comes from behaviorism, some of the areas comes from educational services, speech and language, psychology, and several other areas. So a lot of what we're talking about today, we'll talk about very simplified forms and terms, so it's very useful. But this has been something that's been researched for a long time and come from a lot of different disciplines. So let's start off with, what do we mean with positive reinforcement? Well, it's about acknowledging that someone's doing something good, or even that they're out of a bad funk and they're doing the things that they should be doing. So letting people know that you see them, that you're aware of them, that you can understand them and appreciate them for what they're doing is what we're really talking about. And we are drawn to get that kind of acknowledgement. And so when it's done the right way, it can be really helpful. Now, obviously, if it's done without real intention, if it's done in a condescending or derogatory way, not good. So you're going to get the opposite effect of whatever you want. But let's talk about some things that we're really trying to kind of focus in on. So there's 6 key things that we found are really helpful for positive reinforcement. First of all, timeliness. If you can say it right away when you see it, the better the association between the action or the behavior and the reinforcement, the stronger we're going to help people want to do that again and again. And again, whether they're doing something great, wonderful, or good, or whether maybe they've been in a bad place and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Sometimes just getting them from a not great place to a normal place is a good thing. And so giving them positive reinforcement, letting people know you see them and are aware of them, helps them to then want to be more engaged in it. However, it's never bad to still give someone a compliment, even for something they did 2 months ago. So don't feel bad about giving someone a compliment as long as it's sincere and it's targeted and you really mean it. Secondly, whenever we can be specific, we're better off. So when we specifically say what someone did or what was said or what is the important thing we want to get across about the behavior, that is helpful. So saying, way to go, is nice. There's nothing wrong with that. But saying, hey, I love that you took some time to open the door for that person. That shows you care about them and are respectful of other people. That was very specific and targeted. Helps them to know not only that you see them, but you see specifically what they're doing. And again, it increases that association to the behavior to wanting them to do that specific behavior again. Again, it shouldn't be overblown. It shouldn't be outlandish. To the point, specific to what they did, and you acknowledge them, you let them know that you see them. Next, probably should be first, but next one is genuine. Make sure it's true to how you feel. People are really good at understanding when something's off. If you're in a bad mood, if you are really frustrated with that person, for whatever reason, giving positive reinforcement from a non-genuine place will backfire on you every time. It's better to just smile and nod and say nothing than to try and reinforce somebody when you're not in a good, genuine place. And remember, it may just be all about you. It could be that you're having a bad day, someone spilled coffee all over your favorite shirt, whatever it is. If you're not in a genuine place, don't do it. With that genuineness, it's sometimes not just about what we say. It sometimes can also be helpful to use physical acknowledgement. So make sure you're smiling when you're saying it. Make sure you've got a happier look, an open and inviting kind of body gestures. Sometimes physical contact can be helpful. It's not always required and sometimes inappropriate. But sometimes a high five, a fist bump, a pat on the back can also go along to helping that positive reinforcement to be more powerful. The more things we get involved in a learning process, the more powerful it is. It's not just additive, it's multiplicative. So, with some of the students I work with, they hear me tell them verbally what I'm saying. They see a big smile on my face and positive body gestures, and then I give them a high five or a pat on the back. Suddenly I've got visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning all reinforcing that behavior. So again, with physical contact, make sure it's appropriate, make sure it's timely, and it's not always necessary. Don't feel like you have to do that, but it can be helpful when you're doing it. After genuine, one of the key ones is make sure it's personal and fitting. As you get to know these people, you get to know what works best for each person. Some people love, public praise where everyone can hear what you're saying and doing. Other people really shy away from that. Some people like it to be done privately. Learn to know the person, understand who they are, start to read them, and you could even ask them, how do you like it best? Some people, it's better to be more respectful in how you say it. Some people, it's just real fun and friendly in how you kind of interact with them. Learn what works best for that person. Make sure it's personal and fitting to who they are. One of the next things that's really key is kind of what I was alluding to earlier with being specific. It should be about the behavior, not the person. And what I mean by that is saying, this was an awesome thing that you did. Hey, you worked so hard on that paper. You got an A. I am so proud of your dedication and your work on getting this grade. That's phenomenal. Is wonderful. Saying, wow, you got an A. You're amazing. Means their behavior is connected to who they are as a human being. Now that's great, but one of the things is research has shown that when we positively reinforce behavior rather than the person, it's actually way more powerful. People are more likely to re-engage in behavior rather than when we acknowledge them as a person. So first and foremost, research says you should acknowledge the behavior. But here's another thing about when we acknowledge the person versus the behavior. If they're amazing for doing something positive one day, when they screw up the next day, that can then infer that they're a bad person. So they do something great one day, the next day they do it wrong, well, they're a bad person. Also, if they have some real low self-esteem issues, when you start saying they're an amazing person because they did something right, it can actually feel painful. When we're at our worst, when we're feeling the worst about ourselves, when someone tries saying, you're amazing, it actually feels weird and gross. And it's because of how we're feeling on the inside. But even when we're feeling pretty crappy and miserable, if someone says, hey, I really like what you did, this thing was really awesome, that doesn't feel as counterintuitive to how they feel about themselves and can actually start to build their self-esteem. So again, rather than focusing on the person, focus on the behavior when we're giving positive reinforcement. As we do that, we'll see them be more likely to accept it because regardless of how they feel on the inside, they can better accept their behavior. And it's shown to increase engagement in that behavior again, more than when we acknowledge them as a person. It sounds a little odd, but that's what research shows. And when you really think about it and really think about how acknowledging them as a person for a behavior they did could lead to them feeling bad about themselves for their failures later, that's why it's so important to really focus on the behavior, not the person. And then lastly, consistency. Be consistent. If they know that you're going to acknowledge them in a positive way for the things they do, that's a really powerful thing. Now, there is, for those of us that are researchers out there, there is the gambling thing where that kind of intermittent reinforcer can be really powerful. Yes, that's great for gambling, but we're not using gambling, and we're trying to actually also build relationships. So if you also want to have a strong positive relationship with the person that you're using positive reinforcement with, then consistency is actually your best bet. That intermittent, inconsistent reinforcement may change behavior, but also really destroy the relationship. So you want to have a good positive relationship with the people you're working with. Just to review what we went over, be timely as much as possible. Be specific to exactly what the behavior was that they did. Be genuine. And if you can, make sure you're using body gestures and smiles to reinforce that. Possibly even physical contact, not always appropriate or necessary. Make sure that it's personal and fitting to who the person is. Make sure you know who they are and what they like, whether it's public, whether it's private. Make sure your acknowledgement fits that person. Make sure that you're acknowledging also the behavior. Acknowledge the behavior, not the person. It's not you are awesome, it's what you did was awesome. That's really key. And then lastly, be consistent. Make sure you're always doing it. That builds positive relationships with the positive reinforcement that you're doing. So that's some of the keys to positive reinforcement. There's another video that we're going to want to do on how to engage in that. We've got a coaching note that we use. We've got several other things that we use specifically with our students, and we'll try and set up that video for another time. But appreciate your time. Thank you.